I've just started playing with Hermes because it remembers more in context. And right now, if you think about it, look at the context what you're in and keep remembering that, right? So it's kind of like us with our memories.
How's it, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Exponential Africa, where we bring you the very best in thought leadership, technology, and innovation. And we've been really diving deep into artificial intelligence in the last couple of episodes because it's no longer a future conversation. It's changing the way we work, how we operate, and how humans interact with the technology itself. We're moving from this world as AI as a tool to AI as a collaborator, a co-pilot, and eventually an operating layer across almost everything we do. And what happens to humans in this AI first world? Well, today we're going to help us unpack this. I'm joined by Sandy Carter, who's one of the world's leading voices in AI, emerging technology and digital transformation. Sandy has held leadership roles at IBM, AWS, and Unstoppable Domains, has advised global organizations on innovation strategy, and is an author of her new book, AI First, Humans Always. And how do you embrace a new mindset for the era of superintelligence? A powerful exploration of how businesses and leaders can embrace AI while keeping humanity at the center. Sandy, welcome to Exponential Africa.
Thank you, Mick. It's so great to be here and to talk about one of my very favorite topics for sure.
It's pretty unbelievable how we are living in this AI all-encompass world. Your new book that you just wrote called AI First, Human Always. What does that phrase actually mean? Let's start with that.
Yeah, well, it's quite interesting. I fought really hard, Mick, for this title because I felt like when I wrote the book, because you write the book a fair amount before you publish the book, I knew that AI was going to be kind of emerging as the first thing. But what I did not want to lose track of was that humans, I think, are always going to play a role. I think there'll always be places for humans in the equation, and in fact, an important place, not just a secondary place. I think it's going to be about augmenting human skill, human knowledge with what comes with the power of artificial intelligence. And in fact, I have a podcast, and I just had my daughter. My daughter said she wanted to come on and interview me. She's just starting an internship, and she said, "Okay, Mom, I want to know, like, is AI going to take my job?" And we were chatting about like what she does. She's an illustrator, she's a creator, and I said, you can get choices from AI, but the final decision has to be yours, right? Like, you're the one who makes that decision. You're the one who gets to decide what ad copy goes live. And I still think that is a human decision as we move forward. So for me, that's what the book meant to me, is that I'm not ignoring AI. AI has to be the first thing that you think about as a company, but don't forget your humans. I don't know if you saw the recent BCG report, Mick, but it showed that 70% of a company's success ratio is not about the technology of AI, but it's about all the human things, the human processes, the human judgment, the human use, the human enablement. And so humans aren't going to be going away for a while. In fact, they will always be there.
Oh, I love it. That's a great study. I think as we are enabled by these AI tools to analyze data and metrics in a much deeper way, we're going to find a lot of statistics like that. And I love the title. I think it's such a brilliant title.
I have to tell you a quick story about the title. So this is what I wanted to call it. And my publisher said, "No, we don't like the human thing. Let's get rid of the human thing." I was like, "No, I want the human thing." And so I don't know if you know, but Wiley publishes Guy Kawasaki's books. Now, we all know Guy's books do much better than my books, but Guy is like an icon. And so I was talking to him about it, getting some advice. He wrote a little blurb in my book for me. And so he goes, "I'm going to go tell him I'm not going to do my next book unless they let you keep that." And I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah." So he did. And that's actually how I got it through. I was fighting so hard for the title, and Guy actually helped me push that title through the maze of publishing.
Unbelievable. Yeah. It's because it's totally pertinent to the times we're living in, and keeping ethics and intuition at the center, which I think is really beautiful. I wanted to ask you, this inflection point that we're in this moment in time is definitely fundamentally different from, and why do you believe it's fundamentally different from previous technology?
Wow. Well, I think there's a couple of things. One, I think it's a technology that everybody can use, right? My dad, my dad called me last night and he's like, "Oh, I looked up all my symptoms on Claude because I've taught him to use Claude." And he's like, "I think I have this, this, and this." And I'm like, "Okay, we got to pause here." But, imagine if you think about like cloud in the background or Web3 or augmented reality, all those were technologies, but they were harder, right? You're not going to use cloud unless you're in the enterprise. You're probably not going to do AR, VR because it's too hard right now. You're definitely not going to use Web3. You and I chatted about how hard it was to even set up a wallet. And so I think this is one of the first technologies that really unleashes the power to everybody. I think everybody could have this power if they so choose. And I also think that it's a valuable thing, not just for people at work, but for personal lives too. I was just reviewing some other data and it showed that people are using artificial intelligence more for their home life, setting up schedules for their kids, creating a menu for the week, testing their recipes out, doing their travel than they are at home. So right now it's like 11% use AI for home use. I would call it home use. And only 9% are using it for work today, like really using it every day, 9%. And so, if you think about that, have you ever seen a technology that has kind of flipped like that? I haven't yet. This is my first one, I think. Even mobile. Do you remember the first mobile phones? They were so hard to use. So I think this is the first one.
You're totally right. It's just because of the ease of use. It's just accelerating and expanding everywhere, basically into every part of our lives. Our personal. It's so interesting to hear about the personal use cases. Somebody actually sent me these recipes today on how to
Yeah.
live longer for longevity that they've been trying to put together for years. So yeah, totally believe that. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, and if you think about, when AI first came about, I was actually part of the Watson initiative at IBM. And, when you see their vision, when IBM first came out, it was all B2B and it was going to be like, let's solve cancer, let's solve, and then, of course, and then we saw the shift. All that was great work. I mean, IBM really set the precedent, I think, for what AI is today. But then we see OpenAI was the first one to come out with ChatGPT, making it so easy that my dad can do it. I think that was the real turning point for it, for the technology. Even though we had the power of it with IBM way back when, the ease was what we were waiting for.
Absolutely, it's like becomes it's like go to the toilet or something that you do every day. Something so
Mhm.
easy to use. Um, but there's still a lot of misconceptions around AI, and we're hearing about even in America. I heard recently we saw at that commencement speech, people were booing when Eric Schmidt was talking about AI, and it's pretty scary that that there are these misconceptions around AI, and especially in the leadership space. What are you seeing as some of the current misconceptions with leaders today?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest one was the one my daughter brought up on that podcast. Oh, AI is going to completely replace me. I'll have no job. I'll have no purpose. I'll have no goal. And I don't know if you saw just this morning, both Sam Altman and Dario came back and they reversed. They said, don't listen to what we said. Humankind and work is not going away. And the economists came out and cheered because they're like, you should never believe a tech CEO. You should always believe economists who were always saying this is just another evolution in work, just like we had in the industrial era. It's a current evolution. So it's not going to replace, it's going to augment, it's going to help people. And I think that's part of why, Eric got booed and there's been several others as well, because the people coming out right now feel like I can't get a job. Why? Oh, it's AI. Everything's being blamed on AI. All the layoffs are being blamed on AI. When I don't think that that's really a fair judging of what's happening in the marketplace today. Um, I do feel like we need to do a lot more work with I would say high school and college age kids. I do feel that every worker will eventually have I call it an AI teammate that will assist them. And it's nothing more in my mind than like what we have today, like an email or a Slack. You don't consider yourself weak because you have email or Slack. In fact, if I said, "Hey, Mick, how can I get a hold of you?" And you said, "Oh, I have no email, I have no Slack," you have to shout across the ocean to get me, then I would feel like, "Oh, you were way behind." I think that most leaders should be planning for that right now, where you have something that helps you, guides you in that direction. And I do think that we've kind of let down that next generation and kind of showing them what the possibilities are and how this can really help separate them, in their quest for a career. I don't believe their careers are going away, and I don't believe we're going to be sitting around drinking margaritas. And it sounds like Darius and Sam now agree too. I don't know if that might have something to do with their upcoming IPOs or not, but I think the same is coming out.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want to have fearful customers when you're about to IPO. And also, I think what's happening in organizations is that, like what we just spoke about, is that this is the biggest shift we've seen in history. When you're having a shift of this nature, and organizations are going to fundamentally change the way they operate, they're no longer going to have the same. You might have the same roles or similar roles, like a C-suite and a middle management and then general staff at the lower tier. You might still have those three tiers, but what they're going to do and how they're going to operate is fundamentally changing. So when there's that much change happening, there's always going to be a little bit of angst and uncertainty and fear, which could lead to this type of thing we're seeing play out at the moment.
Yeah, completely agree. um, And I think it's just like every other revolution we've been through, except it's so fast and so easy. I think we haven't really, because of the speed, we haven't really had time to sit down and really explain and train the next generation. I mean, right now, I come from my husband and his whole family are teachers, and they're just saying everything's just moving so fast. They want to develop a curriculum and get people trained and get people ready. They just haven't had the time. So I think that we're seeing some of that from organizations too, right? So for example, I watched two enterprise clients start their AI journey the same quarter, the same budget. One ran, I don't know, 46, 47 pilots across different departments. They were chasing kind of trends. And 18 months later, they had nothing in production because they were just piloting. They didn't really slow down, right? They're just like, oh, let's do this, let's do this, let's try this, let's try this. The other, yeah, lots of experimentation. But the other customer, same budget, what they decided to do is they picked three workflows. We're going to focus on customer onboarding. We're going to focus on customer support. We're going to focus on contract review. They did the pilot and then they went deep and they restructured their teams around the workflow in a different methodology than what they had been. They trained the teams, which is really important. So many people today are not training their teams. And then they rebuilt their data. Data is so crucial here. So today, that one is a case study of AI transformation, and the other one is still piloting 50 different things. So while I do encourage people to experiment, you can't just experiment, right? Sometime you have to pick the workflow, design the work around it, get going, and go deeper, not just continue to do things because it's super cool or super trendy or it's going to get you a quote in a magazine, right? You really have to do stuff that really impacts your bottom line.
I love that. I think that's really great insights, because a lot of people say you should just experiment and you should just. But if you experiment with too many things at a too much of a surface level, you're actually never going to get results. So I think that is great advice to focus on these intelligent workflows, that we can really go deep into. That's a really great.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things I like to say is you really can't strategize your way to AI success. You really have to get your hands dirty. In my book, I talk about something called playstorming. It's a word, it's just a made up word I created. But what I was trying to get across is that, if you think about the cloud, like people could talk about the cloud and never really use the cloud, and they would be intelligent and they would be able to decide how they do it. But when you're talking about AI, if you don't get your hands dirty, if you're not in there playing with it yourself, you don't understand the potential. So even Mick, when I was writing my book, AI First, Human Always, I challenged myself to use AI in every part of the writing process. I used it for research. I used it to review my outlines, my editing. I even had the cover art and that cover design. I had several choices done by artificial intelligence. And then what I did is, because I wanted to make sure everybody who got the book stayed up to date, I developed an agent that goes along with the book. So if you get a copy of AI First, Human Always, it comes with an agent, and you can ask that agent, "Hey, tell me all the use cases. Let's say, tell me all the experimentation that's being done in financial services." But then you can also say, "Hey, Sandy, I know you've been doing, research with Forbes and that you're chairman of the Applied AI group for the Digital Economist. What is your latest research show?" And then it will bring in stuff that's actually not in the book because the book was written, basically a year ago, and it brings in that as well. And so what I really love is that AI helps me to keep my readers up to date. It's nuanced in my voice, and I really push the limits on what I could do and how I would design it because I wanted to playstorm. I didn't just want to talk about it in theory, I wanted to do it and execute it as well.
I think that's such a great idea as well, because a lot of people will write books and then they'll pretend they didn't use AI, when in actual fact you're leaning in and with intention using it to try and make you a better result using your own judgment and evaluation throughout.
Yeah, and I now have over 2,500, it actually may be close to 3,000 today, people using the agent, which then also gives me great ideas, Mick, for my next book because they're asking questions. I'm seeing all their questions come in. Like one of the number one questions is, I'm a student. What do I do about AI? Or I've got a lot of parents saying, what do I do to advise my kids? Your kids are too young right now. But imagine if you had kids right now who were getting ready to go to college. Parents are like, do I tell them to go to college? Do I tell them not to go to college? Do I tell them to learn? Like, what do I do? And so I actually have two new books on the horizon from all the questions I got from the agent because it's just such a great way to see what is top of mind for people today. What are people really concerned about, and how can I help them?
Yeah, I think we actually recently just launched our Singularity summit at the media launch, and Shane was saying, the big thing for him, for his daughter, who's at university, who just went, he just signed her up to GitHub. He signed her up with a Claude license, with an OpenAI license, and he said, go start building, because that's what's going to be important to get your next job. It's not going to be what your resume or what university you went to. It's going to be what have you built and what evidence of work.
Playstorming, playstorming. You got it. He's on it. Sean is on it. He's got it. That's exactly right. Yeah. And I just think that, imagine, Mick, you and I and Sean are into technology, right? I mean, we know it, we love it, we're not afraid of it. And so we can give advice to our kids that helps them. But imagine if you're not. Like, imagine if your dad's a banker, or, maybe your dad's a plumber, or, there's so many people who are just afraid of what's happening. And I just think that, maybe writing a book to help these kids very quickly, obviously, would be something that would be great. I obviously think there's something there, especially after we've heard all the booing now. It's multiple graduation ceremonies, commencement speeches. I think this is a really interesting area to start for sure.
And I mean, what skills become most valuable in this AI first economy world? Like, what skills do they need to learn, the kids?
So for me, I mean, the first one is you need to learn AI. That's kind of obvious. So you do need to play. You do
What is
need
it
to
like
build.
prompting and using the tools and
Yeah, I actually have up on my website like a one pager guide to setting up Claude, to setting up a Claude skill that's written for a non-techie. So you can go to sandycarter.net, and then there's a one pager in there that just shows you if you're in high school or you're in college and you just want to get started quickly, it's a great way to do that. Secondly, I think domain knowledge is going to be really important. Now, Mick, you and I have a little bit of an advantage because we're a little bit older. So we've actually worked on projects. We actually know how to manage. And so, all the research shows that people in their 40s and 50s are doing better at AI because they know how to ask the prompts, they know how to build so they don't get in trouble later on. They understand a domain. Let's say, that I know how to build a marketing campaign. I know all the elements that go into it. So then when I build it, I've got all the elements in it. So I've been advising, even last night with my daughter and her friends, that they need to go deep on something. If it's, animation, if it's doing marketing campaigns, if it's, looking at influencers, but just be able to go deep on something. And then I think that continuous learning, right? I mean, this is not over. It's not like anybody can say, okay, I read the book. Now I've got all the knowledge. I'm kind of done. I'm putting the book down. I'm done. This is going to be continual learning. And so I keep telling to people, figure out what makes learning exciting to you, what makes learning powerful for you, so that you're going to be a continual learner. Because I do feel like we're just getting started. We're not even, we're just off the starting block. This is going to be a long game. So you need to make sure that you do that. And then I would say finally, just judgment, human judgment. One of the things I learned from my daughter doing that podcast with her friends was, and these are young men and women in their 20s, was that they don't have the confidence, right? So like you and I ask, Chat GPT a question, we're like, BS, that's completely wrong, right? We feel confident doing that, but they don't. And so I was trying to teach them, like, just because an AI tool says something to you doesn't mean it's right. You got to push back too. You've got to have that judgment that goes along with it, or ask it questions. Maybe you don't say you're wrong. Maybe you just ask deeper and deeper questions. And a lot of times I've had, Chat GPT come back and say, oh, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I forgot about this, or I forgot about that. So I was showing I call them kids, these 20-year-olds last night. I was showing them some of those techniques, how they could use it to build up their own confidence as well.
amazing? Yeah, I think the real intelligence is the judgment layer. That's where the real, crux of the intelligence lies, because the rest of the task can be repeatable and done really fast by AI. But it is that judgment layer, setting the context, understanding if it solves the actual need. That's really important for us to still focus on.
Completely agree. Yep.
Do you think everyone's going to have AI co-pilots? We're going to be AI assistants are standards, personalized AI systems, our own operating system. Everyone's getting their own operating system nowadays, helping them be better.
I think so. I mean, I think it's going to be kind of like, if you didn't have email, if you didn't have some of these tools that we talk about, in the back in the day when you didn't have a calculator and everybody else had a calculator. I do think that these are going to become normal tools. And in fact, right now I'm kind of doing an AI assistant, almost like a dating, I don't know, a dating challenge for myself. I'm trying out all these AI assistants to see which do I like? Why do I like them? What's going on about them? So I just tried out. I don't know if you heard a David's Bridal. One of my best friend's daughters getting married, and David's Bridal just came out with a wedding assistant. And so my friend was like, "I know nothing about technology. Try it out. Tell me if it's any good." And it's quite interesting. So it, it like looks at the bride's, what her likes are. It looks at your budget and supposedly estimates the budget. So far, it's quite interesting. It's an assistant for a bride, which is quite interesting. Yeah, and I do think, Mick, I do think we're gonna come up with more vertical use cases for assistance than generic, right? Like, do everything for me. I think these very specific ones are gonna be interesting. And then, of course, I did work for Amazon. My tomorrow case that I'm trying out with an assistant is called Amazon Quick. I haven't used it yet, but I've talked to a lot of people who have, and they said it's really good for like quick emails, quick, calendaring, quick things that you want to do. Like a graph, like a human graph of who you're talking to, who you're really asking questions from. So I'm going to try that one out too. And I've got a couple others on the docket that I want to try out as well.
Amazing. I haven't heard of Amazon Quick. Yeah, that's a new one.
It's a new one. Yeah. Well, see, and this is part of the problem, right? How do you stay up to date?
I know I'm so involved in OpenClaw, and then now Hermes is the new agent everyone's talking about. And I
Yes,
just don't even have the time to start Hermes.
I just wrote a Forbes article on it. Yeah, it's bypassed OpenClaw. I thought that was going to happen though. I have OpenClaw. You can't see, but I have OpenClaw running over here on a separate little Mac. But but I've just started playing with Hermes because it's supposed to be. It remembers more in context. And right now, if you think about it, I think the AI systems who can look at the context what you're in and keep remembering that, right? So it's kind of like us with our memories. We don't forget that. But others are dropping that. And I'm also wondering, Mick, OpenClaw was purchased by OpenAI, and that was when I stopped using it as much.
Yeah, it's really the pace of how this is all changing is just incredible. And Ray Kurzweil has predicted that over 30 years ago that we're going to get more and more of these surprise and delights more and more often. And it's going to really challenge how we can context switch and how we can keep up with it all. But
Yeah.
like what I want to ask you is around human connection, because with all of these changes and everything that's coming, it's great to use AI to help you learn faster, but we don't want to lose those human connections. Like we were discussing on a previous part about with Yoss around like when your dad and I'm a dad, and I'm thinking teaching my daughter how to tie her shoelaces. Is it better for the AI to teach her how to tie their shoelaces, or me to teach her and have that moment where we're having that human connection moment and we're passing on that knowledge, and there's also that connection that's going on? What do you think is going to happen to all of that?
I think human connection is going to go up and up and up and up in value. You're already seeing it now. I was just, we just had a long weekend here in the US, and I noticed there was an ad that was playing over and over and over again. And it's about a guy who, gets up in the morning and he's like, Alexa, turn on my lights. And then he jumps in a car to go to work, and it's a self-driving car. It gets him to work. And then he goes to the coffee shop and he asks for a coffee with no sugar, and it gives him sugar. And then at the end, you see he comes to a bank, and the bank opens the door, and there's a person who greets him at the door, invites him in. They sit down, they have coffee together. And essentially what that bank was advertising is, hey, you can trust us because we are human. And I think we're going to start seeing more and more human elements to it. I think that what makes us uniquely human will be popping out. And I think more companies are going to start showcasing that than ever before. And you're already seeing, like, look at your summit, right? Singularity, South Africa. If you haven't been, you definitely should go. It was really a moment for me, Mick. Thank you for inviting me there, because not only did you have the conference, but I got to meet in person all these really cool people. And then we did a safari afterwards. So then I really got to know a whole set of people. And to me, that's what makes what you do special. It is that human connection.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think an important factor is that when all of this AI is that it's going to rise up our human connections together. And that's, just leads us to like, what are you most excited about the next decade with AI? It's a pretty exciting time we're living through.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about everything that's happening. I was just playing around with the new Roblox and how they are now creating worlds. Like we've known about metaverse worlds, but these are now like spatial AI worlds that remember things about you and that you can transact across different worlds. I think that that's going to be really exciting. Maybe like the moment that the metaverse really reaches its potential, right? And Ubu can come alive. I also am really intrigued. I don't know if you've seen the agentic commerce with Chat GPT. I just met with DaVinci, one of the a company out here in Silicon Valley, and what they're doing is so if you're in Chat GPT and you say, "Gosh, I want to take a great vacation," hey, tell me about a vacation in Hawaii. What they're opting out to now is agentic commerce, where you prompting that actually brings up specific brand led messaging, but in a particular way that you write differently. So, for example, I may be writing about a vacation I'm going on. I think it's going to be raining. So, I'm looking for maybe clothes I take on my vacation for the rain. Most catalogs today aren't written for how will my clothes do in the rain. But now what DaVinci's doing is tweaking all of that so that it does pop up in Chat GPT and you kind of get this ad play in Chat GPT. It is paid for, but it showcases the linkage to what you're talking about. I think that, that convergence of like a wallet, the ability to verify and pay, to identify what you're talking about, not having to tweak your language. I think that is really exciting. We've talked about that as marketeers for a long time, this personalization, but I do find that that's going to be really interesting. Yeah, you have to go check it out. I mean, I did an article for Da Vinci. We did a podcast on Da Vinci, and he showed us some of the work. Like, for example, for wine. So let's say you're planning a party, and we talked about a lot of people are using AI now for personal. And you type in, hey, I want to have this great party in Cape Town. What should I do? And you type that into ChatGPT, and maybe it will recommend that you serve a particular type of vodka, play a particular type of music. And that brings in some of this agentic commerce where you now have maybe a very unique vodka to the theme of your party, or the music will be linked to the vodka. It's really kind of cool. I think it's really kind of cool. And then I think the third thing I'm really excited about is watching how countries are now viewing AI almost as a competitive weapon. So many countries are now developing their own learning model, right? I mean, we saw the big difference between DeepSeek and some of the learning models developed in the US and how they answer questions. So I think most countries are now trying to figure out how do we have some of that culture embedding in our learning model. And I think Africa, I just was at the World Bank and I met with a huge contingent from Africa there. And what I thought was really interesting was one of the companies is trying to figure out how to digitize some of the culture. So if we look at it today, only 15% of the world's knowledge is digitized. And that's what the LLMs are using, right? They're only using 15%. But what about the other 85% of knowledge that is not digitized? Well, in Africa, these folks are taking from African tribes, they're having people sit down, tell them stories, tell them about the culture, and they're trying to digitize that so they don't lose that knowledge. Back to that human connection, right? Is it better for you to teach your daughter to tie her shoes or better for AI? Well, what this is doing is talking about the customs and the culture that makes people unique. And so I do feel like this embedding of culture into the LLM, like starting to happen in Africa, will be extremely important and really exciting as we go into the next decade of AI.
Absolutely agree. We're in Africa. We're a very young population. We've got this leapfrog opportunity, so it's really up to us to grab it and to get involved, and to build out these LLMs, like you say, so that there is sovereignty in Africa. I want to move to quick fire rounds, just to give you a couple of quick fires, and you can just give me very short answers,
Okay.
just to have some fun as we close out. But this has been such a great conversation, so insightful, and it is really exciting to know where we're going with all of this stuff. Sandy, tell me one thing leaders are underestimating about AI.
I think they're underestimating the power of people in AI. How to get things done. I was recently with a group in Malaysia, and they had to trash an entire 9-month AI project because they only brought in these few little people. And then when they brought in the whole team, they were like, oh my gosh, there's so many great ideas. So they basically kicked it out and started again. I think leaders are underestimating the power of people's knowledge.
And one thing the media is overhyping.
I mean, I think it's that AI is going to take all of our jobs. I just don't see that happening. I mean, even on a podcast, right? If you said, "Hey, AI, take this, record it, publish it, et cetera," AI can't do that. We're far away from that. I don't think that AI is going to take our jobs anytime soon.
And what's one AI tool that you use every day that isn't ChatGPT or Claude?
So I tend to use Cast Magic a lot. Cast Magic enables me to take clips of my videos and get them into succinct little elements or write up like a social post on it. Or sometimes what I'll do is like I'll feed it my keynote and it'll go through and say, hey, here's like 7 things that you said that we haven't heard anybody else say before. Maybe you should start writing LinkedIn posts and other things about those. And so I use it. I use it for that a lot.
And
And superhuman too. Superhuman is like an assistant, but again, I told you I'm dating a couple other assistants, but I do like superhuman so far too. Sorry, go ahead.
awesome. Yeah, I haven't heard of. You said the first one was
Cast magic.
Cast Magic, and Superhuman. I have heard of. Yeah, that is a great one. Will AI create more jobs than it destroys?
I think AI will eventually create more jobs than it destroys. I do.
I also believe that. So the productivity booms are going to be so great that it's just going to outweigh.
Well, I mean, we see this happening today at my company. We are leveraging AI to help us code. And then we code those features we've been waiting on for a year. And then, of course, what happens? Oh my gosh, there's like 100 new ideas. So we actually hired engineers to come in because now that AI, removed that roadblock, those long dates. Now we've got like all this other potential. So I do see so much potential. I'm so excited about what AI is going to do for us and for the world long term.
And finally, one thing that humans should never outsource to AI.
Thinking. I think humans always need to think. They always need to be the arbiter. And this was really the big one, Mick, for that next generation, where I started to see them because they're not confident in what they're doing. They're like, oh, well, Chat told me that, or Claude told me that, or Perplexity told me that. No, you are the one, like a human program that you need to challenge it. You need to think. Do not lose your critical thinking skills. If you take away one thing from this whole podcast, do not lose your critical thinking skill set.
Love it, love it. Well, thanks so much. I think what's clear from this conversation is that AI isn't simply another technology wave. It's a fundamental shift in how intelligence itself is created, distributed, and applied across society. And as powerful as these systems become, the future still belongs to us, to humans who can think creatively, adapt quickly, and use technology with purpose. Sandy, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights. And to everyone watching, the future won't be humans versus AR. It's going to be humans and AR together. Let's keep building. See you in the next Exponential Africa. Please like and subscribe. Thanks so much. Cheers.
Thanks, Mick.